Quaid, we're doing SEO crawling myths with the one and only David Quaid. Hey, David, I have a question for you. Can I ask this question, David?
Yeah, see.
David, can you optimize crawling?
Not really, no. It's just one of these old myths, I think, that persist, and it's probably the most discussed topic I've had online this week and last week, and I think it needs to be tackled, right? I think there's a lot of content from Google, and there's a lot of content off Google that says that you can, right? And there's a lot of content from Google says you can't, and I think it comes from a misunderstanding and an oversimplification of what crawling is. And it goes back to the early days of, you know, this is what a spider is, and the spider tries to understand your website. And it's such a naive, childish video, right? And from that, it spawned all these things, right? Like people think that crawling is a single process event. So you put up a sitemap, it looks at all of your URLs, it goes after them. You also have the age-old problem of point of observation. You have people like if you're going to be a person in a web team looking after a website, you're at a big company, right? You're after taxes, that's like $500,000 if you've got 3 web engineers looking on your websites. That's not a mom and pop shop. That's a big company, right? So if you're at a big company and they've got lots and lots of authority, and you realize, hey, the sitemap's been broken for years, none of the URLs are accurate. You put up a new sitemap, Google goes off, does a lot of crawling. That's a great fix, and that's a great solution, and it makes sense that you want to share that with people, right? But it's a very unique situation. First of all, you have to assume that everyone else's is broken. And when I see people asking questions like, I can't get crawled, I can't get indexed, or I'm at crawled, not indexed. We covered crawled, not indexed before. People are like, oh, do you have a sitemap? That's like 30 to 36% of the replies, right? And then it's like, maybe your sitemap's broken. And then it's maybe like this. And it's kind of like, look, the status is crawled, not indexed, not we couldn't find the damn thing, right? So it's found, it's been retrieved, which means there's no technical impediment. I saw 2 people sparring on Reddit the other day, and it went on and on until the one person said, like, I think you're trolling me, right? Because it was like, oh, but it could be this, it could be that. And it's just like, you're just jumping from gap to gap. If it's crawled and you can see the page, there's no technical impediment. So stop saying it, and stop thinking that sitemaps will fix it. Stop thinking you can optimize sitemaps or crawling events. Now, if you've got a 10 million page site, first of all, you're going to struggle to get that indexed. But the third problem in all of this is the absence of authority. And I did see another debate where someone was trying to talk objectively, and then they just lost it and they gave up. And they're like, there's no such thing as this magical authority. And I'm like, it's not magical. And without it, you would need magic, right? Authority is just a count of click-through rate, pogo sticking effect, clicks on a topic, and links from other pages, and links from external pages. And I think people always see that advice in a negative view and say, like, I'm always pro backlinks, and I'm really not pro backlinks, and I'm not ultra wide hat. I'm just really somewhere in the middle of like, this is how Google works, right? And I know a lot of people don't like PageRank, and when LLM search came out, I think a lot of people who hated Google and hated PageRank and hated playing that game thought this was their savior, right? I've seen, for example, a lot of CMOs go on ads for products they shouldn't be advertising that have lost huge amounts of traffic due to scaled AI. And it's like, you know what? It's not that difficult to figure this out. Any competent SEO with Ahrefs or SEMrush could have figured this out for you in 10 seconds, probably wouldn't even have charged you. And so you can't get out of this technical appreciation of Google, right? It's not just all good content and, catchy headlines. It just doesn't, it's just not like that for everyone. It may be like that if you're writing for Microsoft, right? I can't imagine you can write something for Microsoft's website and it will fail in SEO, right? And so one of the
You said you can or
the
can't
myths
imagine.
I can't imagine Microsoft writing a blog post on anything that wouldn't rank, right?
Yeah,
Because their
yeah,
websites are so broad, right?
yeah.
There's so many subdomains. Yeah, they've just got an excellent SEO strategy.
Right.
And of course, they're Microsoft. They were the number one accessed website when I was a software engineer,
They're one of the most clicked
and that's because
websites in the world.
they're I would say they're definitely a near seed in PageRank NS, right? The other thing I think people see is that they get assigned a spider, and it kind of doesn't work with how the web is triaged. So Matt Cutts did a very, very good video, and I can't find it anymore, but it basically came out with caffeine. Caffeine was where Google looked at the problem of how do we crawl the whole web, right? How do we manage all of these hundreds of millions of pages, if not billions back then? And this is like 14, 15 years ago. And so they realized, look, the most important thing to crawl frequently is news articles. And that's another myth inside this, the sort of like crawl optimization thing, is that people think more crawling equals better indexing outcomes. And I don't know why, right? These are like software systems. It's not like, I think that people still have this, and we still see this language, right? Like Google's assessing you, right? And sometimes you see me on X, and I make jokes like the website content appreciation committee is meeting in the Danny Ponzi library, a $10 cover charge, but you get $100 if you bring 10 people, because it's the Ponzi library. But it's so we have to get away from this talk, right? That Google's assessing you and evaluating you, and you're just bouncing up and down. It's not an evaluation cycle. It's just the way the numbers fall into place, right? Like they do in poker or whatever.
This method of marketing is so effective, I had to make sure it wasn't against Google's rules before I kept doing it. It's a form of SEO I call compact keywords. Whereas most SEO focuses on putting up articles to answer questions how, what, when, compact keywords focuses on putting up dozens of pages that sell to searchers who are actually looking to buy. These pages rank on Google and convert so much better than normal that when I discovered this years ago, I couldn't believe this was allowed. It's less work too. The average compact keywords page is only 415 words. Compact Keywords is a 13-hour deep course on getting sales with SEO. A customer recently said, "Each lesson is dense with information. You're giving years worth of experience boiled down into 15 to 30-minute lessons with no filler or fluff. I feel like I'm gaining a new superpower." Compact Keywords is about setting up an SEO funnel that brings you sales for years and years and years. It works with AI, it's less work than traditional SEO, and it makes way more money. You can get it now at compactkeywords.com. Back to the podcast.
And so you don't get assigned a crawler. Crawlers work in two modes. First of all, there's a discovery mode, which means like if you've got a sitemap like CNN, like a news sitemap, let's say they've got a single news feed for just like US politics. That crawler will crawl that sitemap every second just to see if it updates. And if it updates, it'll grab the URL and then put that URL in a high crawl list. It doesn't go after it, right? Bots that are in a discover mode go and find new URLs and put them in the crawl list. And if that URL doesn't meet the topical authority, it gets deprioritized. So there's a separate system that handles those incoming URLs. So the way Google triaged the web is to say, look, news, discover, QDF stuff. We're gonna high authority sites. We're gonna crawl this in every hour. The whole World Wide Web will be refreshed, which is pretty bold, right? And you need lots of data centers all around the world to do that. And then they said, next level tier 1 stuff we'll get to this in like 12 hours, and then everything else smaller. And so what they do is every page. Crawling is at a page level, not a domain level, and you can test this, right? Don't take my word for it. Log into Search Console. Look at your performance report, look at your pages top to bottom, highest number of clicks, inspect them, and you will see the indexing date go down. Now, the indexing date will differ if like you updated the page or not. It may or may not require. So there's a bunch of tests done when a page comes in. Is this important enough to index? Did the file change? Did the structure change? If it's very high authority, it doesn't have to pass the other ones, right? So sometimes you might update your fave icon, or you might update the page title, and you're just not enough authority. It's just not going to update. But if you look at the pages with no impressions, no clicks, they'll have the least frequent index date. And so the way it throttles is the pool that you're in has a higher ratio of crawler bots to pages. So if it's like a 1 to 2, you're getting crawled every second turn, right? If you're in 1 in 100,000, maybe the 29th of May, that page will get crawled, and that's how they do it. And so there's some broken philosophies, and I see a lot of SEOs who don't like Google quoting John Mueller saying, or say if you quote John Mueller, you're not a good SEO. And I don't really understand that, right? I'd much rather get my advice from John Mueller than Purple Pineapple 2823, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so if you're one of the thoughts is that if you've got like 100,000 pages and 1,000 of those are paginated pages, that if you remove them, you're going to reduce the number of pages and increase your crawl budget. You're not. Your pages that are getting clicks will always be in a high priority queue. They will always be crawled. And that's why internal linking is so important, because if we go back to our last video and you put a link to a new page in there, you're going to pull it out of that low priority queue and pull it up, right? It's going to get discovered faster. That doesn't mean it moves, but if it gets authority, it'll probably move to a higher pool, all the better. And so I think, and then when you look at the lower pages that just aren't getting crawled indexed, that's because of authority. If those pages are getting crawled and not indexed, or they're getting indexed and not ranking, you don't have authority. And it comes back to one of my favorite indexes is urgent care, which is like 450 million pages. What's the point of adding more pages to this index if they have no authority, right? And so I also think Google are partly to blame for the situation we're in, right? They've removed, like, most of the videos that Matt Cutts did about authority and backlink are all gone, right? Unless they're hosted on an agency account. The sitemap pages and crawling pages all talk about quality. And we know that the yardstick for quality is unfortunately backlinks or internal links. And again, I'm not doing this because I want to sell backlinks. I don't sell backlinks. I don't buy backlinks. A lot of people do, and I think it creates an unfair market situation. It's not my fault. It's not my problem. Well, it is my problem. I've got to deal with it like other SEOs, right?
Yeah, but also, to be fair, lots of people who buy backlinks mess it up.
A lot of people who buy it mess it up. And again, I think where people like you and I and the people that we talk to, the Harpreets, Gagan Gotras of this world, all of the people in our network, Sean Anderson and stuff, um, and other SEOs as well, like Joy, Lily Ray, wonderful SEOs. Our heart is in the small businesses, right? We're all business owners, right? We're all small business owners, and our heart is like with the business owners that have to compete in this area with all of this competing information and disinformation. I shared a link with you, a screenshot earlier with you yesterday and today of like all the people who've reached out on X and LinkedIn to us saying, Edward's done such an amazing job. Love the work you and Edward do. And it's great to see. And that it's clear that people need to hear a solid, reliable source of information. And I think Google's been a little absent in that, right? By removing authority, they've created a vacuum that has allowed schema and LLMs.txt, and also it makes a joke of them, because if you look at other SEOs that are also incredibly capable SEOs, they're saying like, how can you listen to Google and take them seriously when a lot of what they talk about isn't really accurate? And that's not a wrong statement, right?
Maybe Google wants that. Google doesn't. Like, I kind of do you ever wonder if Google doesn't want you to know how to do well on Google with organic?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the SEO starter guide, it says things we don't want you to focus on. We don't want you to focus on EAT. It's not a ranking single. And while PageRank is fundamental, right? In the Google, dictionary definition is like cannot exist without. That's what fundamental means. We don't want you to obsess with it, right? In other words, we don't want you to go buy backlinks. That is the most contrarian statement, right? Because you can't deny it's not fundamental, right? But there they are trying to downplay it. So yeah, you're 100% correct. They're absolutely trying to throw the cat amongst the pigeons.
Because
right?
Matt Cutts, I've been sharing him so much on this show recently. Matt Cutts was so helpful to so many SEOs. Do you think the reason there's not another Matt Cutts from Google is intentional, or just kind of like an accident?
Accidentally intentional, and I'll explain why. John Mueller comes from the web industry, right? Matt Cutts was an early founder and builder of algorithms inside Google. What I loved about Matt Cutts is when I was an engineer in Dell, the senior engineers that built Dell, not a lot of people will know this, but when we built Dell in the 1990s, Dell wrote its own version of Unix called Dell Unix for Release 5. And they tested their systems up against SAP and things like that. And these guys built this MacGyver-like system over in midnight, right? And it was so fast. It ran on like Novell servers, Unix machines, and they built it themselves. And the way their passion for like file level engineering was exactly the same as Matt Cutts. And Matt Cutts talked about the actual engineering, and that's why I think we all like him. The problem is that the people that now talk about are given limitations and specific things to attack. And it's not intentional. I think Google wants to engage with the SEO community. It used to be a lot more wishy-washy, right? There was no webmaster tools for a long time. SEO didn't exist. Every now and then, like Google would change and pretend that SEO wasn't even a thing. And there doesn't seem to be a happy medium for them, right? They seem to go all in on telling you how it works and then backing off, right? Maybe partly because they can't deal with link farms and PBNs because they're just engineered so well, right? In other words, people do such a good job of engineering link farms that they mirror real sites so much that it's very difficult to determine except by looking at weird heuristics like strange, unnatural link patterns, right?
Competent black hats. Competent black hats
exactly.
do such a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of people who do that don't even consider themselves black hat, right? Like they're not trying. A lot of people that I hear talking about it, it's like, I need my business to exist. It's an existential failure. So I think maybe that's why Google doesn't penalize as much.
Yeah,
right?
but you don't need a PBN for your business to exist.
No, but I mean to buy the backlinks from link farms, right? That's why people engage in link buying. I think they feel they have to because they have no choice. That it's like, I either go bust or I get caught in 3 years and I get bust.
And they just don't realize that they don't have to play that game.
I think they feel they have to. Like,
no, but they feel they have to, but they don't realize they don't have to. Yeah, they don't realize that they don't have to do it. And to be fair, also, I just want to say, like, when John Mueller responds to questions, like, I love it, and I share it all the time. Yeah, John Mueller is super active in the SEO subreddit, which is awesome. He's always giving useful responses. His responses on social media.
Yes, I always see Barry, whenever he does, I see Barry write about it. Now, whenever I see Barry's tweet, I go and look, and it's always inspirational.
Yeah.
But I just want to correct myself because I don't want to say to other people, beware of your own point of observation. I have to be aware of my own point of observation too. I'm not exactly in a high e-commerce space, right, where there's only 3 sites that are collecting 90% of the clicks. I can't really tell people that they do or don't have to, right? I don't think it's fair of me to say that. I'm not here to judge people, right?
No. And with more competitive niches like iGaming, you're gonna skirt the rules a bit.
Absolutely. I'm not making excuses for it, but I also don't want to be here like a holier than thou.
But the thing is, most business owners are not in these crazy. They think that they are. That's the thing. They think that the SERPs are so competitive. You see that? I see that all the time too. Like someone will message me and they'll be like, "Do you think I could do SEO for like a keyword like this? I imagine it's really competitive," and they just don't really know how to evaluate competitiveness.
It's interesting. I found myself in a conversation this week with people that are very, very competent SEOs, right? Have a lot of experience in SEO. And while you're trying to hypothesize, and this is a very big website that we're working on, it's a very interesting project. And we found ourselves talking about the fact that a page had something that made the company look alive. Like it was something to do with like, it was advertising jobs and now the jobs were closed and maybe that's why the page was down. And I was like, okay, look, we're in tinfoil hat territory here, right? It just doesn't make sense, right? It means that companies that aren't advertising jobs then don't have signs of life, right? And it comes back to like, this is how Google thinks and the evaluation committee. And I think when you're going down that street, you've got to stop and just turn back and start looking for rational answers. Occam's razor is a good friend.
So,
the simplest answer.
The simplest answer, yeah. It's the best answer. Can you optimize crawling with authority?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. And that's again why your links and your link control in pages is so important. Reducing pages on your site isn't going to help. And if you made the argument, even if 100 million other sites did the same thing, yeah, maybe those pools would get smaller, right? But realistically, that's not going to change things. And also, Google removed the last webmaster control, which was throttling your crawlers, right? Just building links to large sites doesn't make pages get indexed. But yeah, you can 100% optimize with authority. It is authority driven, and I think we have to be clear on that. That's not magic. That's not us pushing PageRank algorithm over content quality. It's just reality. The pages with the most clicks get crawled the most. And if your pages don't have authority and you put links in them to each other, and I saw someone sharing a page that said like, oh, if you have your pillar pages and they link to this page and they link to that page and they link to this page, it sends all these signals. Stop inventing signals to create pillars to support your ideas, right? That's not how it works. You're not doing anything magical. These spiders they're the DHL of the internet, right? They go off and fetch pages, or they go off and fetch tracking documents and give you the status of the tracking documents. That's all they do. Just because a page is crawled doesn't mean it gets indexed. And if it gets indexed, it's indexed. It doesn't have to be indexed 100 times. You're not making an appeal. It's not like the indexer doesn't trust you, right? These algorithms have to process pages in milliseconds, right? And you go through the entire algorithm in milliseconds. Maybe you don't go through the spam ones, right? Like you're not going to get caught for scaled content in the same algorithm. That's going to come down the road days later once you're finished and you've hit a certain heuristic. Then you'll get nailed. But with page level optimization, there's no assessment. It's not waiting. It's not trying to understand you. If your page is Hyundai brake pads for a 1998 Elantra, right? Guess what? Your page is for brake pads for a 1998 Elantra. There's nothing confusing about it, right? It would be not confusing. It would just be less informative if your page is called About Us or Services. That's just stupid, and that's just a waste of architecture. And I think the other thing is the word architecture and technical SEO, right? Technical SEO to me used to mean how do you design a big site like Indeed or Amazon? And it's come to be like fixing every error, right? And if we fix all our errors, we'll get a gold card. And when you look at how, like, at camp, we were like, what, a 250 person company, and we had like 10 people in web engineering and SEO and paid search because we were 99% reliant on Google. And so when you look at an organization like that, the web team is only fixing the tickets, right? And as like someone who's in charge of that part of marketing, when we have our marketing get together, I want the web team to know they've done a good job because they've got multiple stakeholders. They've got the sales team, the support team, the product team, product management, corporate marketing, partner marketing, field marketing. And so I want to show them that when they fixed our web tickets, like internal links, or put up a new sitemap, or put up a new section, our traffic went up. And I think some web engineers walk away with that thinking they are the SEO. And publishing hygiene is restorative, right? So in other words, if you go and buy a secondhand Mercedes and you're driving around and everything's going well, and then you notice your fuel economy is going down and it's not accelerating like you used to, and it splutters, and you go to a mechanic and he goes, your spark plugs are worn, and he changes the spark plugs. You're not AMG, right? You're just fixing your Mercedes, right? And so when people, again, the second most common response when people are like, my page isn't being crawled, or I'm not ranking, or I don't get SEO, people are like, look after your tech stack. This is just nonsense, right? And there are, if you search for it, there are blog posts that will literally tell you like Google assesses your tech stack. This is third-party information. This is someone's opinion. This is subjectivity. And this is why we seem to be so bad at understanding objectivity. And this is why I think denouncing John Mueller and the Google search team is not good, because they are first-hand sources. And if they're getting it wrong, or we're interpreting it wrong, or they're opening to interpretation, that's fine. But I don't think we can just dismiss it. I don't want the only people to have a voice to be the people who are saying Google has a tech stack. So if you're using WordPress, it really likes it. If you're using Wix, it doesn't like it. It's not like that. There are no codes in the HTML. It doesn't process the whole HTML document. It looks for certain things in it. Different algorithms, different parsers do different things with that, right? Like it might take your page description. It might take the OG description and use that description. It might not. It might write its own. They might use AI to write a new snippet for you. There are lots of things that they can do. Um, but this idea that looking after your tech stack, I think it's important. Big websites, it's important. I'm not undermining the value of it. What I'm saying is, if you take something that's optimized and it breaks and you fix it, it's restorative. And at the same time, if somebody's just built a new website and it's a 10-page Wix website, it's probably not broken. It's probably not the sitemap. And again, the sitemap is not a to-do list. Google doesn't follow it from A to Z. If you're very highly authoritative, yes, absolutely. You put a page in there, it will go and fetch it and index it 100%. If you have no topical authority, it may not even come back to your sitemap. You can delete your sitemap, you can publish a new sitemap, you can put urgent in your sitemap, you can change the date time in your sitemap. It doesn't matter. It's going to look at the URL and go, I just don't care, right? Because it's in a pool. And it's not because Google doesn't love you or you built a terrible website. It's just a lack of authority.
How do we how do you use this this authority and crawling discussion to think about for the websites that out there that have like tons of pages, to think about content pruning?
Um, I think look at the root cause first of all. If a lot of sites I see, the slugs are ridiculously long, or the slugs are off center. For example, the page is about kettles and the blog post is about a company retreat. The blog post on the company retreat is not going to do anything, right? So keep it on the blog or put it in LinkedIn. Pruning it isn't going to change anything. It doesn't dilute your authority. You can't dilute authority like that. You dilute authority by putting too many links in a page or by linking from a page with no authority. So pruning, you know, it doesn't deliver much. And having 1,000 pages or 100 pages on a site doesn't necessarily add that much overhead. And if it does, then you've got other issues, right? But I can't um, don't worry about trying to get a gold star in Google Search Console. The reason Google Search Console monitors your site and gives you feedback is it's the largest web crawler, and they assume that not everybody. They're trying to cater for everyone. They're look, we're crawling these pages. If we can't access it, we should tell you that we can't access it. And they don't differentiate between page types, which is vital. So if they don't pick up that your parameters are broken or that it's UTMs, which I think is silly, right? I think it speaks to the age of the Google systems, right? That they can't fix those things because it means rebuilding too much. And so the fact that those errors persist, cannibalization and duplicate content persist, shows the ages of age and the basicness of the systems, which Gary Iles talks about a lot. So if you're worried about, all of these pages and it choking up your system, forget about it. If you think it's important to Google, they're just giving you a warning saying, look, we can't access this because of a 5x error or a 4x error. If it's crawled, not discovered, it could be a rendering issue. It's unlikely. It's more likely to be it's off topic. It's not linked to from an authoritative page. You don't have enough topical authority. Um, if you look at the heuristics of people who present with this problem, they are all brand new sites with no links. And while it could be this and it could be that, to all the people who keep wanting to post, I don't know if you think you're being helpful. I don't know if you think you're looking smart. I don't know if you're fishing for business, but you're just prolonging the solution for the person, right? If they have no backlinks or if they aren't publishing pages that are getting clicks. So for example, somebody just starts a website and they want to rank number one for furniture. That's not going to happen. And crawl optimization is not going to fix it. And pruning is not going to fix it. For big websites, it's much more important to figure out how to stretch your authority. We spoke about this before about links dying 85% per link. So if you've got 100,000, a million, a 5 million page site, you've got tiers and tiers and tiers of pages. Not all of those pages are going to rank. If they don't rank, authority is dying and they become endpoints. And so you need a marketing brain, not a web engineering brain. You need a marketing brain to figure out how can I land traffic on this page. and reinvigorate it and apply power back into the grid. Think of your link network as a grid. So if you think the best way to light your house is to link every room in parallel, that's not an efficient use of energy, right?
Were there any interesting I saw that actually I think it was on the SEO subreddit content pruning from our episode with Lars Lofgren and Gagan Gotra, the HCU episode that was actually being discussed. Do you remember that? Yeah.
Yes, it was a great conversation, and I saw people sharing it on X last week. Yeah, um, I, I'm I'm still not certain. Like, if nothing's getting indexed, I don't think removing pages will help with indexing unless it was a volume targeting vector that Google used. Um, Also, I've seen people claim that like there's been hundreds of thousands of recoveries, which I also find very hard to believe. I'm sure black hats have, but I also think that the only way to recover a HCU domain is to move domain. And I wouldn't say moving 10,000 pages or is a good first starter, right? That sounds like scaled
Maybe
content.
instead of content pruning, people need to think about how do they organize their sites effectively so that they can build authority to different hub pages for sub pages so that you can have authority flow to all of your page as well.
You make such a good point. Thanks for bringing that up. So actually, one of the best videos you did was like how you jump from position 50 to 1 by republishing your slug, right? I think
Yeah.
that's vital.
Yeah.
It always comes down to these basic principles. And when you try to overcomplicate it and try and go like, oh, woe is me, I have a special scenario, I have this URL
Yeah.
structure,
A special
it all
scenario. Yeah.
you're being dealt with like every other page. You're getting the same crawler, or there's so many crawlers, they're getting rotated. You're not getting the
People
same
are so
crawler anyway.
certain about it too, which is really crazy.
Mm.
You
Hmm.
hear like the certainty. I know that I have a 100% different scenario from everybody else. No, you don't. No.
I think a lot of people that think they got hit by HCU, or a lot of people that got hit, maybe got an authority loss, right? For example, if Google zeroes your backlinks, I think a lot of people think like, oh, I should just get to rank, and it's like, no, no, no. You've lost that power station in your network. Your authority is down. So if you had pages targeting very high value keywords only, right, like very short slugs, like / Hyundai, right, you're not going to rank for that anymore. So if you think that by fixing your 404s, you're just going to magically bounce back, that's a very naive thought, or it's a very lazy thought. You're going to have to republish pages like you were talking about, right? You're going to have to say, look, this slug isn't going to work in a lower authority world. You're effectively going down the cornerstoning, finding your watermark and going back up. And I think that's a lot of work, and that's what people overlook. And I think it's easier to try to look for a scale, a special switch, kill switch that just turns it on magically. Maybe it's buying hundreds of backlinks. I don't know. It's not my solution. But yeah, if your site has lost authority, the pages that we're ranking in highly competitive niches aren't bouncing back. You don't own it. You don't have a right to it. And I think that's part of the problem with the good content thing, right? And people say stop writing content um, for bots. I don't think people do that. I think maybe people are lazy. Maybe people write bad content and don't.
Yeah.
But I don't think people actually write for bots. I think people. One of the interesting things is there's no subreddit, there's no X community where people post up their designs or content for others to evaluate. And I think there's a simple reason why, is because everyone knows that every other designer is going to be out for blood, right? They're going to destroy your design. Go like, he put about us in the top right. That's so stupid. When we tested the last 17,000 brands, and it becomes an ego thing, and everyone knows that because it's subjective. So if you write an article and you ask like 100 other people that think they're competing with you to review it, they're all going to find a problem with it. And so there is no good content. So don't assume that people's content is bad. If I put that content on my site, it'll rank. I promise you. So
About
I was going to say a lot of people also create like like I've had discussions with people. They say like, oh, it's thin content. I'm like, nah, I'm pretty sure it's not thin content. We had the fun with the Funfluencers page, right?
Yeah.
That's not thick content. Is David Quaid always right? That's not very thick content.
Yeah.
People also ask content. That's not very thick content. And then people go like, no, 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 but there's circumstances. Yeah, you can overcome it with authority. Like, that's because it is authority, right? It's not like it, and then they're like, oh, maybe it doesn't have enough information gain. What's the information gain in what is a funfluencer, right? Um, it's kind of like the God of the gaps argument when agnostics and theists debate, which I always think is a good way to learn about argument structure, debating structure, logical arguments.
What about how do you think about duplicate content in all of this?
So duplicate content, really, the problem is that the document name and the emphasis that Google puts in the document name. And if two documents, so for example, let's say you have like mysite.com/Hyundai brake pads, and then you have mysite.com/Hyundai car parts/Hyundai brake pads. Those two pages are 100% going to cannibalize. And if you spell, or let's say it's tires, and you have the European or the UK version of tires with a Y, and you have the US spelling with an I, they're synonymous or semantic. They're going to cannibalize. The problem with duplicate content is that the two pages block each other after the results. It's not an algorithm issue. Ryan Jones is adamant that cannibalization isn't real. I'm very adamant it is, because 30% of the projects I work on are just decannibalization projects. And it's because Google isn't actually that good at semantic understanding. It's because it confuses it. Where we have pages where Google thinks that there's an implied word. And even though that page doesn't have that word, Google is deciding that it applies to another index where that word exists. And there's already a page in that index. It's not an algorithm. It's not a penalty. When
When does
the
it become a
indexer
problem? When does duplicate content become a problem for sites?
it only becomes a problem when Google can't tell which page to show and they block each other. And that Mac Cuts video is still there. It's called "How Does Google Deal with Duplicate Content?" And it says, we just don't care. 35% of the content we index every day is duplicative. It's not an issue. We're not trying to save money.
What do you
That's
mean
an
by they
interesting thing
block
I
each
see.
other?
So that's what I was talking about. If you've got two pages in the same index, the indexer is not the tool that delivers the final results. If you think about the SERP results page, typically each domain gets one result on the same page, and maybe it gets an indented result. Where you've got cannibalization, the two pages are in the same page of results, and the parser that prepares the document removes the page. So there's two parts. There's one that tailors it for like Google's requirements, and then there's a second parser that builds the SERP results that tailors it for you as the user. Between the two, the one picks the one page and the other picks the other page, and in the final results, neither are shown. So they're both ranking, they both show up in Search Console, but neither makes it to the user. And that problem in Google engineering is as old as Google, and it hasn't resolved. And that's why there's a duplicate content issue. A lot of people think that, especially, funny enough, European SEOs, right, who don't understand American engineering. There's a famous quote from a World War II general: America doesn't solve problems, it overwhelms them, which is an interesting take. Europeans, on the other hand, are all about saving costs. Like if you take your key card out of the door, your hotel, your lights turn off. In America, the air conditioner is running 24/7, so it's always cool when you come in, and it saves energy that way. And so when you look at the different, a lot of people say, oh, you can't have duplicate content or thin content because like Google wants a return on investment, or it needs to save money, or it doesn't. There's no sign that Google wants to save money. And I think I said this before, an hour-long 4K video would store like 11 billion HTML documents, right? Crawling is not a cost-saving error for Google. It's like one of the few areas they spend money, right? They need to index the whole World Wide Web. That is their value to society, to their user, to their shareholders. So duplicate content is not an issue. Cannibalization is an issue where you have two pages that at a slug level target the same keyword. And sometimes that's synonymization, sometimes that's topical authority,
Can you explain?
lending keywords to pages.
Can you explain why at a slug level? So would a subfolder change that, or would adding a word to one of the slugs change that?
It depends. For example, words like best, top are adjective. They're not so best car parts and car parts are the same slug sometimes, right?
So I have an example here. So you have mysite.com/tires for school buses, and then mysite.com/school buses/tires for school buses. And the pages are mostly similar, but there are some differences between them. On a mysite.com has a lot of authority, a lot of topical authority. These are fine pages, but the result is both pages do not get shown in the search engine results.
So yeah, the subfolder isn't going to change anything at all. And the problem is that Google will test between two pages. It'll automatically test between two pages. And that's probably why they can't resolve the engineering problem behind cannibalization. And so if you had school dash buses dash Ohio and school bus dash Ohio, it's the same slug. And if you had bus for school kids dash Ohio, it's the same slug. And they'll end up in the same index together. They'll end up in lots of indexes, right? They'll end up in an Ohio index back at page like 10,011. And then also you have an issue where, for example...
Just to be clear, the result of that is that neither of the pages will show.
Could be, right? It could be that the one page has a longer history, right? So if one page has been alive for 11 years, the other page will just never get a chance to interrupt it because it has click-through history. It's where the two pages, where the second page can come in. And the other case is that's a very explicit example. The thing that catches people up, and I'm just trying to think of an example that's like sort of like broad and random. I'm going to pick data centers, right? So let's say like you have server data centers, white label data centers, failover data centers, and then you might call them like server centers and then data service centers. And then you might also have another search phrase for like storage data centers. The problem is that if Google thinks data and storage are synonymous, both pages will each enter each other's index, and then that's where the problem starts. So it doesn't have to be like school-bus-Iowa or school-bus-Iowa. It could be that data and storage are synonymous, or NAS and storage become synonymous, or network and storage become synonymous. And then the end result parser doesn't show the page, so it can't get clicks, but it starts affecting its click-through rating, or one page will drop because it didn't have a positive click-through rating. The other page will start to rank, and then Google will automatically start a new test auction a week later, and the cannibalization starts all over.
So what would you say to websites that are like, oh my gosh, like I have a very specific niche. I'm always writing about the same thing, though I write about it in different ways. Does this mean that I can't keep writing about the same thing because like now I'm going to cannibalize all my stuff? Like, how should I go about doing this?
I think you need to figure out whether the word is required in the slug or implied in the slug, which I know that sounds weird, right? But for example, if you have a lot of topical authority around data centers, you may not have to have the word data center. You might be able to call the page server storage, and data center is implied. So you have to figure that out first, right? Then you have to see if you're already ranking for the phrase, right? So for example, let's say you wrote about network storage, and now your product managers come up and said, look, we need to create a page for NAS storage. We've now got a hard disk unit that plugs in as a USB drive straight to the network with a network point. Don't assume that you don't already rank for it. And if you're ranking on page 3 and think a specialized page might do better, just be careful, because if you're already ranking, you're now adding another page to that index. You're introducing a new chance of cannibalization. So, and that's often where cannibalization comes from, where people hyper specialize. So, yeah, if you're very narrow topic, like, load balancing, for example. And so the way to make it differential is to make sure that the keywords in the slug are truly differentialized, right? Like adding Nginx to it or adding IIS. And you can test that by doing the search and seeing if it's only Nginx pages. If suddenly like web server pages also appear, then you know that web server is now synonymous with Nginx, and that's problematic.
So, do you ever find that the actually, I had someone message us on X. I don't know if you saw this comment, and someone's like, the FAQ page strategy, a big problem with that is cannibalization.
Yeah,
Sorry,
could be,
it's
I
not.
guess.
It's not the. I think it was the FAQ. It was a people also ask strategy.
People also ask.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
If you've got questions in other pages, like as H2 titles, yeah, that could be problematic. So you definitely, again,
Could it though?
many
Because
SERP tools.
that's different from the slug. Because if you're creating a specific page for this one thing, and but it's just an H2 on a page that's about lots of other things.
So it depends. Does that H2 on that page rank, right?
So
if
you're
it does
saying
already rank.
So if the H2 on that page ranks, and then you put it, and that's already ranking, and then you put up a people also ask page going after the same thing that you had in the H2, and this page actually goes deeper into the topic, so just like more informative, and this people also ask page is more relevant to the query because you have it in the page title, in the H1, in the URL slug, and all you have in the other page is the H2. So what's
Right.
the
So
result?
let's say the other page in the H2 has a rank history, right? So the relevancy is very low. Let's just say it's like a 10 out of 100. But that page ranks for other keywords and it's got a lot of authority. And let's just say the authority is 1,000. And your new page comes along and its authority is only 100, right? But it's got a higher relevance score because it's in the title and in the URL, and it's effectively the document name. So the whole document is relevant to just that title. Whereas the other page is relevant to a lot more things, and because of its age and because of its ranking for its primary keyword, it's got a lot more topic authority. Because of the lack of relevance, the H2 only gets to use 10% of that 1,000 authority points, which is 100. The new page, which only has 100 authority points, is 100% relevant. For that phrase, the two are perfectly equal. They will absolutely cannibalize each other all day, every day. So the PAA is for people that are developing authority. So if you had a PAA and another page and it's not ranking, go remove it before you add your PAA, because you're just going to develop a problem down the line, because eventually that PAA is going to give that topic as an authority to your site. And the other page will start to rank because it'll have more authority and more relevant with its lower relevance score. But if you're already ranking for it, then you don't need to use the PAA because you don't need to grow authority for that. You already have it. So you need to avoid that and just move on with something else.
And so how much do you think about when you're putting up any sort of content? How much do you think about, like, am I already ranking for this content? Because maybe like just a lot of people, they just want to go deeper on topics. And they're like, I don't even want to have to think
Absolutely.
about that stuff. I just, I had a new idea. I want to attack this problem from a different angle with a different piece of content.
So there's two issues where that happens. One is like where you have a change in content developers and you've got like a 10,000 page blog post or site. That's why you have SERP reports, right? So you can see that you're already ranking. If it's a case that it starts to generate a lot of long tail keywords and you're not ranking for all of them, the temptation then is to start splitting out and developing specialist pages. And so that's where you've got to be worried. So one, have a SERP report, make sure you don't, sort of trade back over keywords you've already written for. And also the SERP reports generally have cannibalization reports. They're not 100% reliable, but they're pretty good. They're like 50-50, 50% good. And the other thing you'll do is you can notice that where you had a rank position and you dropped, then you need to, cannibalization should be one of the things you check for, right? And the easiest way to do it and test it is to go to removals and do a manual removal request and remove that page. And if the other page should bounce back within 12, 24 hours at least. And if it does, then take the page and find another home for it, like find another index to put it in.
And then,
I think
so
that's anyway.
how about, we were talking about striking distance keywords where you're ranking below position 7. What was it, 3 to 7? So what if like you have a page, it's ranking for this keyword, but you're like, this, I don't want to add more about this keyword to this page. I'm going to create a new page for this keyword. Is just targeting this keyword, going deep on that keyword, which you are already ranking for, but it's not position 1 to 3. Is that a viable strategy?
So one of the things you're saying, for example, is like sometimes like you might go deeper, add more content. That is not going to make any difference, right?
No,
Google
I'm
can't
just
tell.
no, I'm
Yeah,
saying,
no.
I'm saying
you.
for people who like just want to like explore it.
I get you.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that I just don't want anyone to think that by going deeper that the one page will be better.
No,
right?
no,
Because
it's,
there's no way to evaluate.
They
understand.
they want to do that for like visitors and their
Gotcha.
brand and all that stuff.
Totally get it. Get it. You've got to check to see and basically go and look at the page and see what it's ranking for, right? If it's ranking page 5, 6, or 7, that's a safe zone. 3 to 7 is too dangerous. At that point, I would not try to dig into specialist zone. If you're ranking 3 to 7 for that keyword, that's not a good time to specialize. That's a good time to develop more topical authority in other pages or in that page. So if you don't want to add more to that page, find other keywords that are related that don't cannibalize. But doubling down on that keyword, that is just not a good idea. That's how cannibalization happens.
So you have like you have a page that's about crawl budget, and it also ranks for page rank decay. It ranks position 4 for page rank decay because there's a short H2 about page rank decay in the crawl budget article. And then you put up a new article and it is entirely about page rank decay. And
take it out of the other page.
Mm-hmm.
Or turn it into a word and link to your new page.
Could that be a good solution, which is to link to the new page?
It can be. The problem is if it still contains the word, right? And it's got previous click-through rate history, the presence of the word can be enough. So not always. That's what makes this a very difficult area. And I think, again, looking at the discussion I've had with Ryan Jones about it and other people, is that where you have a lot of authority and you build one page and it ranks for 10,000 keywords, I think there's a lot of people jump to the conclusion that you just have to put in one keyword and Google knows it also means all these other things. As you have diminishing authority, that breadth goes down very, very quickly, right? Because you're not authoritative enough to rank for the higher keywords. And that's probably why it doesn't affect them. It's not something they see. And then when you start to lose authority, or after a Google Core update, or after a spam update, or whatever, you've lost some backlinks or you've lost some authority, the pages you have start losing traffic. It's because of issues like this, right? Where one way of targeting a keyword was highly effective under the authority you had, and now it just doesn't work anymore. And so these are things you have to look for. Did I over-specialize in keywords? Or how do I build new pages? You've got to make sure it doesn't cannibalize. You've actually got to put effort into it, and it is difficult.
And so the other side was, you said this SEO Ryan Jones was like, no, this isn't a thing.
Yeah, he was saying to me, cannibalization is my eat. That it's not really a thing. And I thought,
what was his argument?
I think he thought that cannibalization was an algorithmic penalty or an algorithmic update. And also he's a very busy person. So, he was probably jumping in and out of the conversation, but it's a very real issue. It's not an algorithm update. It's a duplicate content issue in the sense that Google thinks the two pages belong in the same index. Nothing's being penalized. It's a problem with how Google returns the results. If the page is blocked from returning in the results, people can't click on it. People don't see it. And that is the problem. You no longer get clicks from it. It's not.
So the solution is remove it from pages where it's not the best. Then you can create your own page for it, which you can use.
Once a page is cannibalizing, the only treatment is to remove the page. You have to eject the page from
the
index.
You have to remove the page from the index. You can't just remove the section from the page.
If it's just the section, right? But normally cannibalization in one of the pages is the slug.
Yeah. But I'm talking like this is that scenario where you have a page that is ranking for many different keywords.
Yes, if a page is ranking for many different keywords and another page could also overlap, if it's not in the slug, it's unlikely to enter into cannibalization. The other page will just win. The problem is where you have a page where, for example, it's also ranking in a keyword, and you then build a specialist page that has more relevance, and you put that in the slug. That page has to enter that index because it's in the it's the document name. That's what also causes cannibalization. And so the only remedy is to eject the page. You just have no choice. If you have two H2 tags on two different pages, the one page is going to have slightly more relevance to the H2, even if it's very, very, very remote than the other. It's the fact that it's in the slug is what normally causes pages to enter indexes and where cannibalization starts.
So why is the solution to remove the first page and not just remove the
Not the
section?
first page. It's moving. So you can if it's just a section, but that might be okay. Again, like I said, the page now has historical click-through rate history, which is very difficult to deal with. And so maybe that keyword is in the footer, which is very common, and that's enough for that page, right? Because it's got so much historical authority built up that even if it's just a 1% signal, it's enough.
How much should new websites who want to do SEO worry about this? Who are now getting stressed out? Like, I just want to put out content and make it relevant. And build links.
The most common issue for small businesses is service companies that rank their homepage for, like, let's do web design or SEO, like my own site. I can't build a page on my site called SEO Expert New York or SEO Consultant New York or SEO Agency New York, even though none of these keywords are in my homepage. My homepage ranks for like 125 variations of that. I cannot build a new page unless I'm willing to suspend my homepage and eject it from the index, right? No indexing it, which would be a terrible idea. But if you're ranking for like roofer, and now you, like, let's say your domain name is like McNally's Roofers in Tampa, and you now want a specialist page like best roofers in Tampa, you're going to struggle with that page. It's if it even gets a chance to rank, and because of the slug, so in other words, when you add the page with that slug, you're forcing it into the same index that your homepage is already ranking for. And that's the problem. That's the only index it can live in because it exactly matches the slug. That's going to be problematic. So if you're already ranking, and this is what always happens, is people are like, oh, I'm in 11th, 12th place, or even 4th place or 5th place. If I develop the specialist page and link to it, if you can get a ton of backlinks, like your brother works in Microsoft and he can get a link on the homepage, then you're probably not going to have to worry about it, right? You'll just get so much authority, it'll overcome it. But for most people, adding the page will be problematic. And I think that's where most of the cannibalization happens. Like, you are ranking really well for, say, fish tanks in Ohio, and then you decide to take the family business nationwide and you build like 50 town pages, and Google's like, I don't really see the town being a differentiator, so the town is in Ohio, so I'm just going to treat them all as the same. Those 50 pages all start cannibalizing each other. And so suddenly you take your website, you add pages, you do the right thing, right? And now you're locking yourself out of Google. So you got to be careful. Again, the way to check that is, if I go and do a search for like a town name, am I already ranking under the auspices of being the best fish tank in Ohio? Then you don't need to do it, or you've got to be careful about doing it. So try it, watch what happens, and then just get ready to remove it when it doesn't work.
How do you decide when it's okay to just remove when the click-through rate for a term becomes a problem, when you can't just remove a section from a page and put up another page, or when you can't just leave that section on this page and then interlink it to the new page? Like, how do you differentiate between when you can and can't?
If you had a page that consistently ranks for that phrase over time, and then it becomes intermittent, and the other page becomes intermittent, and the average position starts to drop, then essentially those pages are blocking each other. And you can look at it at a keyword level. That's why I think site audits are so problematic, because a lot of site audits are done. It's very difficult to do an actual SEO audit without understanding the strategy of the company, right? And it's very difficult to do that
Right.
in an hour. It takes me months. Most cannibalization, again, unless it's a 5-page site where they added 4 new pages and they're cannibalizing each other. And I found this for photographers, and I found this for every business. Usually for like B2B companies, we discover it down the road. We don't know it's actually the issue. It sort of comes up when I start testing for keywords. It's very difficult to diagnose. I've also equally seen people have Claude misdiagnose cannibalization issues and hallucinate it. And I'm like, yeah, you overreacted to that problem and pruned way too much, and you actually can go back and publish the content again. I think the idea that an SEO can do a site audit in an hour or a couple hours or a day is in itself very naive. Understanding the strategy, the intent, the competition, the mindset of the user takes weeks of osmosis, right? Getting in and sitting in with the marketing team, understanding that SOC is sometimes systems on a chip and sometimes it's security operations center, and that Google can't really tell the difference, right? So that's what I mean. Like BERT is often a lot of technical SEOs will say like, oh, Google semantic, you don't have to target keywords. No, you target key phrases and patterns. But BERT is not an SEO tool. BERT is a user tool, right? So, and BERT just doesn't understand AI SOC and SOC are two different phrases. It just doesn't yet.
When should websites and SEOs and marketers actually go in and do the work of really focusing on decannibalization?
I think it should become apparent. Like, I assume that most SEOs have a SERP report, right? And you've got your competitive phrases, your money key phrases, your, branded. If you start losing a keyword that's vital to lead generation, right? That describes one of your services, that if people land on that page, you get like 10% leads, and you lose that, and you've been putting out a lot of content, then start looking into that page and why it fell. Maybe cannibalization is a reason. Another way you can look at it is some search SERP tools keep a track record. So the problem with using Search Console, right, is that if the page no longer ranks, it doesn't show in the report anymore. Whereas SERP tools actually do a pretty good job of historical look back. And you can say, look, between the last 7 days, last 3 weeks, 28 days, 6 months, whatever, what did I lose? And if you see a key phrase or a variation of a key phrase you lost, see if drill down into that page and that keyword, and look if that keyword has started to bounce. So if you're tracking a keyword like top web design course and best web design course and best course for web designers, and then one of those keywords starts to get erratic, then look and see, filter in on the keyword in Search Console, and then look at the number of pages, especially in the last 24 hours. And if there's a number of pages ranking around the same, or they're splitting it, or in the last week, they're taking turns in different days. And so if you focus on one page, it's up and down, and then you focus on the next page and it's up and down on alternating days, that would look like it. So the only way really to diagnose it is to go to a keyword level. So the problem with cannibalization is that pages can rank for their main headline keyword, and not show up. And it doesn't look like they're losing anything, but it's just one keyword, and it might still rank for a while or show as ranking, or it's dropped in ranking, but it's because of cannibalization. And where you see 2 pages rank for the exact same keyword, or a regex of keywords, then you've got an issue. You might also see it where let's say you've got multiple teams writing about the same lettuce salads all the time, right? And you're a big lettuce provider from New Mexico. And you're starting to add like best vinaigrette, Italian vinaigrette lettuce salads and rocket salads, and it's going to be bound to creep in. If you start seeing new posts rank, I call it the failed X rocket launch, right? If it goes up and comes back down and then flatlines, that probably didn't have enough authority to cannibalize. Or if it starts going up and down and it's got a broken orange line, that's another clear sign of cannibalization. So it's difficult to diagnose. I wouldn't trust too many AIs. I see a lot of people do like just dumping their data in it. It's a difficult to diagnose issue, but in those instances where you see like those bottom blog posts not performing well, if you're not getting clicks for it, you're going to lose nothing by. So if you see the same keyword and you see 3 blog posts and one blog post has only had 3 clicks, and it's the same keyword in another blog, then just remove it. And if you see that the average position normalizes and flatlines or starts to go up, then you know you've corrected the issue. So you probably want to there's 2 ways to diagnose it. One is a primary keyword lost, or because there's so many variations of keywords and you can't track everything, you notice that if you start looking for a keyword, or you start looking at a page and then look at a keyword it's ranking for, over time, you notice that the orange starts to slip. If you look at those periods and you see a second page appearing, then that's a sign of cannibalization, and you might want to address it.
Yeah. I want to do a quick true or false recap for things that we already discussed, and it's just going to be a nice way to finish off the episode. So it's going to be, I think I have 6 things here. All right. So true or false, you can optimize crawling.
False.
True or false, reducing pages equals more crawl budget.
False.
Crawling is a single event.
I'd like to take things John Mueller said for 200. No, it's a multi-staged event. It could be like up to 5 different crawlers to get to one page. Yeah.
More crawling equals better indexing and higher rankings.
False.
Changing dates equals more crawling.
It can do. It's largely false, right? If you have, so first of all, sitemaps only start to work when you're highly authoritative for something and you get effectively a listener bot. There's no such thing as a listener bot. What I'm saying by listener bot is what Google used to have, like Index Now. Index Now still happens for sites that are highly authoritative. Like if CNN writes a page, they don't have to go and ping Google, right? They just add a new page to their index. And that's because they have a bot that it's in such a small pool that it's crawling their sitemaps every second. If they change the dates on their pages, their bot will automatically pick it up, and their pages will get added to a high priority queue, which means it'll get crawled within seconds. If you have no authority on your site, Google won't even look. It won't even want to check your sitemap for another 3 weeks. That's your next index date. If you have a mediocre, if you're a middle of the road authority, where most people are, like the 35 to 75 region, if you do that too often, Google will ignore your last mod date. In other words, it says, oh, it's changed, I'll go look at the page. Part of the indexing process will store a CRC check that gives like an overview of what the page is without doing an entire word for word comparison. It takes too long. And it'll say, okay, I'm going to reindex it because of the authority of the page and the last mod date changed. But I'm going to look back and see that over the last 8 changes, there was only a 1 byte difference. And then it'll go, okay, stop trusting it. And then you fall down. And then suddenly your index cycles get further and further apart. There's no going back from that. So you can do it, but it'll cost you down the road.
Sitemaps. Oh, go on.
I was going to say there's a process to understanding, like from crawl to indexing, that goes like, does it have authority? Does it have authority for this index? When was it last indexed? What's the file size? At any one of those points, it can be passed straight to indexing. And then it's like, is the file size large enough? So in other words, if you've got pages that aren't very authoritative, but they were only a 1-liner, and you add 100 lines of text to it, it might get re-indexed. And I think that's where people get the freshness myth from, and where people get the, oh, well, I added more content to my page. That's because you're on such a high, you have to pass over so many thresholds to get indexed. And so some pages have to pass through all of those checks, right? Was it a significant update? Is the last mod changed? Do I need to pass a CRC check? If you just changed your page title, you have low authority, you're not going to get re-indexed. And you might, that's when you have to do a manual crawl. That's like one of the few reasons for doing a manual crawl. And so I don't think people realize that those checks are applied to every site. More authoritative sites need to pass less of those checks. And so that's the stages that people have to go through.
Last one, which we just said, sitemaps. Do they solve crawling?
XML sitemaps do if you have authority, and do nothing. And please go look at the Google dev guide. It's really clear. It goes like, if your site's really small and all of your internal pages are linked, you don't need a sitemap, right? We can find all your pages. Discovered, not indexed, means they can find your page. So sitemap's not going to help. HTML sitemaps, which aren't an official thing, right? Because a HTML sitemap is just a page. They were very, very common, and now they're very uncommon. Like Wix does not natively support, Webflow doesn't natively support it. HTML sitemaps actually pass authority. And if you put them in your footer, even though they get incremental authority, they will actually solve a lot more problems than an XML sitemap.
Do you recommend HTML sitemaps?
Always.
Mm-hmm. Do you have one in primary position?
I think so. Used to have one.
I'm looking now. What would you just call it? Would you just call it a sitemap in the footer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm SEO resources. I'll just search the page for sitemap. No, I don't see it. I wanted to see how you do it. But yeah, you see those sometimes.
So sometimes we just build manual ones where we just like link to the main service pages, product pages, or void service and products altogether if you can. I don't know why after 28 years of web design we still do that. I think it's terrible practice. Microsoft don't do it, and Apple don't do it, and that's good enough reason.
Wait, what is it?
So a lot of website designs still come out with services or products and services, right? So in the main navigation, and everything is grouped under services and everything is grouped under products. So if you're a product company, a lot of people just automatically add a products menu. And I think it's just superfluous, right? Like you're either selling a product or a service, right? There's nothing else. And like I said, Microsoft and Apple don't do that. So I don't know why everyone else does, but it just seems to be like this unchanged thing in web design where every web design agency by default, I don't know if it's the agencies or if it's the clients, but people still insist on having products and services page. You've got one or the other, right? If you're an SEO company, you don't really have products, you have services. So why bother creating?
What's the issue? Like if you're a local business, what's the problem with having a services subpage where you list your services and the services, and each page is targeting a different keyword?
What I mean is, don't make people jump from your homepage to a services page. List the services on your homepage. Get straight into it, mm-hmm. right? There's no need to put them on tier 3, right? Bring them straight in.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Or figure out the most important ones and then link directly to those, and then
exactly.
And
then you can
page.
fan out from.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. I think this has been a very awesome conversation, David.
Yeah, I hope this helps a lot of people.
Me too.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for David. You are always welcome on this show. Just enjoy that.
I always love being on this show.
The last one, did you see the image that person posted of us listening, where like I have the glass of coffee and you were listening like, did you see that?
I missed that.
No,
I missed it.
Yeah. Somebody shared on X. I'm like, I want to just read the person's comment. It was so good. I think I reshared it. Yeah, it was shout out to John Livingston. And John said, interesting episode, photo taken during the quote unquote, the approach of this as an SEO problem is unhelpful. and this image of your face is, and he tagged you in it. And he said, as always, I'm a fan of all your podcasts and material, as well as the great David Quaid. And it's such a great image. I think.
You're gonna have to put it into the podcast.
I'll do it. I'll put it into the podcast. Yeah.
I'll go looking for it after this.
Yeah. All right. Cool. David, thank you again for coming on the show. And this is episode 1026 of the Edward Show. 1026 days in a row doing this podcast. The best search engine optimization podcast. The only daily search engine optimization podcast with no days missed. And if you watch this on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. If you listened on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, thank you so much for listening. And I will talk to you again tomorrow. Bye now.